Hey everybody, this is a video that I wanted to shoot in an attempt to explain quite a big shift that happened to me recently that has really changed how I look at things and the way that I move forwards in life, like with business, with relationships, with everything. So we all know, right, that we have these thought patterns, we have these beliefs, these behaviors that pretty much are formed when we're very young. I think it's by the age of 7, most of the most impactful stuff has happened. We've already developed those kind of beliefs and thought patterns that we pretty much tend to carry on throughout the rest of our lives. And I have become aware of some of those patterns, like just through the practices of yoga, meditation, self-awareness, all sorts of personal development work that I've been doing for years now. And I've always had this really kind of like frustration, because it's like, I know what the patterns are, I know where they come from, I understand all of that, but what the hell do I do with that? You know, like, it's one thing to be aware of it, but what do I do with that? How do I change it? And I was often getting stuck there, and I hadn't really found an answer that, you know, that kind of satisfied that, or that I felt I could actually use and apply. Anyway, so recently, through the kind of work that I've been doing on my business, and just as a natural fact of like making more progress and putting myself out there more and kind of facing fears that were holding me back, but I had to face in order to progress on my business. What has happened recently is that I've been getting a lot more attention. Like, more people know who I am, more people reach out to me for advice or just like nice encouraging words, that kind of thing. But essentially I've been feeling that I'm much more in the spotlight, and the spotlight is never something that I have sought before. It's never something I've wanted. I can remember for as long as I can remember saying to people like, oh, I don't really like attention, you know, I'd rather like be the person kind of in the background. You know, I used to work in television production, and I was always behind the scenes, and if anybody tried to put a camera in front of me, I was like, nope, I work behind the scenes. And you know, so this is something that I have been running, obviously comes from a belief, a situation that happened at some point in my childhood where I maybe felt that it wasn't safe to put myself out there, to be seen, to be heard, to be in the spotlight. So anyway, all of these feelings started to come up that made me feel very uncomfortable, and I actually found myself recently getting very anxious. It already happened once before, and I'd become aware of it, and then it happened again. And when it happens, it's literally like I feel like I'm in physical danger. Like my body feels paralyzed with fear. I've got knots in my stomach, you know, my heart is pounding. I feel so anxious, as if I'm in physical danger. Of course I know that I'm not, but my mind and the beliefs that it have are so strong that they are triggering this behavior, the physical manifestation of fear in my body. So now, if you've experienced this, you'll know that it's not very pleasant, and you can apply this to anything. It might not be anything to do with like being in the spotlight for you. It might be, I don't know, like talking to girls or talking to boys, or it might be to do with like shooting your first video, or whatever it is. You can apply it to any situation. So I went through this exercise, and it was so powerful because it made me realize that the reason my body was reacting like that, the reason I was having these responses, was all coming from this belief that I've pinned to it when I was a child, when I didn't know any better, right? And this is where we say, okay, so like you can become aware of the pattern, you can become aware of the belief and the negative impact that that's having on your life. But how do we change it? So what I want to give you today is a useful tool how to change it. So I mean, I could talk about this for hours. I'm going to try to keep it brief and maybe go into it in more detail in another video. But essentially, to keep it, to change this belief, what you need to do is you need to start questioning it. So you need to look around and you need to say, like, okay, is this really true? So for example, if I had a belief that every time I put myself in the spotlight, it's bad or dangerous or whatever because X, Y, Z, you know, and you can fill in the blanks. So I might say it's bad because I will get judged, people will not like me, I will maybe become the center of negative attention or negative feedback, or, you know, and then what's the worst case scenario that could happen? That essentially that's what your body is responding to, this worst case scenario that it thinks is possible. And you know, if I was to drill down and say, okay, what's the worst case scenario? I could probably drill it down to something along the lines of, well, it would, you know, if I get lots of negative attention, if people decide that they don't like me, if I'm not accepted, then I will be kind of pushed out. I will be, what's the word? Like, I will kind of I will lose my community, I will lose the friendships that I have built, you know, I will be neglected, I will be ignored, I will be shunned, like all of the things that as human beings, we don't want that, you know, we're human beings that want to be connected to each other, we want to feel like we belong. So essentially the root cause, the fear at the bottom of it is something to do with a fear of not belonging, a fear of being alone. And I found this so powerful because when I started to question, okay, is this true? And then you look around and you maybe have built up all of these stories in your head that say, yes, it's true, because this happened and this happened. And I can remember a time 5 years ago when this happened. And what you've actually done throughout your life is you have, the mind has used situations to confirm the beliefs that you have. So when we see that, like if we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, and if I was to say, okay, if I was to put myself out there in the spotlight, what would my friends think about that? Would they think it was bad? Would they see it as scary? Would they see it as a problem? Would they get anxious? And the answer is no. Like, if you see it from someone else's perspective, always the meaning that you have given to something, the other people are not going to have the same meaning. They don't have the same perspective, okay? So I hope that makes sense. But essentially, when you can start to do that, you can say, like, what perspective would my family have on it? What perspective would my friends have on it? What perspective would, my boyfriend or whatever have on it? And you can pretty much see that they would probably give it a different meaning in most situations, okay? Unless you were really in danger, in which case they might agree with you. Okay, I'm going to turn around now because I've actually got to get back for a phone call. I can't walk forever. And so, okay, let me go back. So find my train of thought. So what we need to do when we see that other people will have a different point of view, then we can begin to accept and realize that the meaning we have given, the story that we have created, is not true, right? There's nothing factual about it. It might feel true to us based on the experiences we've had, but it's only true because of the meaning that we've given to it. And if we can see that other people would give it a different meaning, therefore it cannot be factually true, okay? So that takes a little bit to wrap your head around, and I would encourage you to go through this exercise with your own beliefs, because me just talking about it won't necessarily get that to really sink in. But then essentially, once you have understood that the meaning you've given something is basically bullshit, right? It's total BS, and you've been living your life by it, then you've got real awareness, okay? You've really got the awareness that this isn't true, it's not serving you, and then comes the question, okay, what do I do about it? So what you need to do, or what I've found helpful and what I've been helped with from my coaches and mentors, is to start changing that belief. Because once you know it isn't true, you have a choice. Oh, a butterfly just flew past. I don't know if you saw that. But you have a choice to change the meaning that you have given that event, that story, that situation. And every time it plays up, every time you feel that anxiety, that fear, whatever the reaction is that you get, that's your body telling you, that's the sign, right? In that moment, you have the choice to say, okay, do I continue to believe this and continue to keep running this same story, this same pattern, which I know is not serving me, or do I change? Do I decide that I no longer accept that I no longer believe that? And if you can, first of all, if you can accept the worst case scenario of what might happen should that fear be realized, that will get you very like in a good place to actually start dealing with this. So if you can say, okay, worst case scenario, if that did happen, what would I do? I would, I'd be okay, because I've always been okay. I would pick myself up again. I would, find new friends, new communities, or, I would make it work, because I would have to. And if you can then accept that worst case scenario is actually maybe not that bad, because you can overcome it, then you can really surrender to this story, this BS that you've been telling yourself. And then that's where the choice comes back in again, right? So you have the choice to start changing that belief. And the way to change that belief is to literally 360 degrees of what that means. So instead of it being this bad negative thing that has happened to you that means that XYZ might happen, and that's all your fears realize, you could say, okay, I know this meaning I've given this is nonsense. So if I was to look at what this has actually done for me, how has this story helped me in my life? What has it done with regards to who I've become, to the values that I have, to the way that I treat people, and look for the positive things that this has given you. So for example, in my situation, I know that this story, and there are many others, we all carry many of these stories, but this story has helped me to become somebody who's I'm very supportive of other people. I really wear my heart on my sleeve and say what I feel, and I really value honesty in people around me. And that's because there's a fear of being neglected, there's a fear of being abandoned, there's a fear of being shunned or whatever, pushed out. And so I do everything I can to make sure other people don't feel like that. So always in my life I have, at school I can remember I was never in the popular group of girls, but I was never the group of kids that the nerdy ones that people took the mickey out of, and that were kind of isolated a little bit and didn't get invited to parties, that kind of thing. I was always somewhere right in the middle, and that's because I wanted to include everybody. I wanted everybody to feel a part of whatever was happening. I wanted to make sure everybody felt safe and that they felt like they belonged, because obviously I was running that pattern of not wanting it to happen to me. So those stories and those beliefs have actually made me, like, it's given me some of my highest values in life, and put me in a position that I know helps other people. And if I can start to look at it like it's a positive thing, then again you really start to change the meaning of what all of this, of what it all means. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. It's a pretty hard one to explain, basically. But then the last thing that you have to do, that I will finish with, because wow, this video is long already. The last thing is that you then also have another choice. You have the choice of changing the meaning, but you also have the choice of what you're going to do about it. And usually the thing you need to do is head straight into the fear. So whatever the thing that is scaring you, whatever is coming up that makes you feel anxious, afraid, that makes you procrastinate, that stops you progressing, that's exactly the thing that you have to do. So like for me in this example, I have to move through the fear of putting myself out there. I have to move through the fear of sharing my opinions, putting myself a bit more in the spotlight. And by doing that, again, if hopefully the result is not the worst case scenario that I fear, and in fact maybe it's a positive thing. Maybe people come back to me and say like, oh wow, you really helped me and you really inspired me, and I have had a lot of that already, which is really lovely and really humbling, and I really appreciate. And then again I can use that to continue to reinforce that the meaning I gave this situation in the beginning is total nonsense, and I can start to really change it and say no. Like if I put myself out there, if I share my experience, my knowledge, my opinions, I will resonate with people who resonate with me. Like people who like me, people who understand me, who benefit from this, they will be attracted to me. Okay, so this is attraction marketing, right? And of course not everybody's gonna love me. That's okay, because it doesn't matter. You know, the point is that I am doing what I can to help people, and the people that need that help, the people that are ready to hear that help, the people that resonate, they're gonna feel good about it. It's gonna help them. So by facing that fear head on, I again can reinforce and change the meaning and this story that I've been running. So I hope that makes sense. See if you can apply it to your own situation is probably the best thing to do. You could maybe go away and journal, you know, start with, you know, what is something that you're afraid of? What is something that keeps coming up? This repetitive pattern that you know holds you back. We all know what they are if we've got any sense of self-awareness, and I don't think you'd be watching this video if you didn't. So we all know what they are. So start there and then see if you can trace it back to an early memory, an early situation where you felt the same, and what meaning you gave to that at that time. And notice if it's come up like many times in your life, if it's become a repetitive pattern, this is definitely something for you to work on. And those things are there for a reason. They're there to challenge us, they're there to help us, they're there for us to grow. So don't be afraid of them. Like literally facing our fear can become something exciting. It can become something that causes us to like just grow like beyond what we could even imagine, and then we can let go of all that BS and baggage that we've been carrying. So I hope that that's helpful. I hope it's made sense. If you can relate, if this is helpful, just let me know, give me a thumbs up, and share your comments in the box below, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.